This is Ed Robinson of Kensington College, continuing the third video on date and time. We'll now consider some examples. In the first example, we'll find the number of weekdays between these two dates, that is to say Monday to Friday, not weekends. First of all, let's take a look at the weekday function, which determines the day of the week as a number between 1 and 7. So we can write some code in our command button just to let you know that today's date is the 4th and it's a Saturday. So if I try this, indicating that Saturday is day 7, so that I could try tomorrow's date, and giving us day 1. So numbering starts on a Sunday. So returning to our problem, we want to find the number of days between two certain dates. So we'll start off by defining the two dates as start date and finish date. So you might like to try that yourself. We need a loop of some description. You could pause the video and give that a try for yourself, but I will now continue to show you how it's done. We could start by finding the number of ordinary days between those two dates by using date diff, and we could put that equal to some value, and we need therefore to dim that value as a long integer. You might even want to just try that out. So indeed that gives us 90 ordinary days between those two dates. So we need to loop through those up to the 90 days. And of course we therefore need to dim our I as well. Now we wish to determine the weekday of each of those dates, so using something like this. We have a date, so we need therefore to dim our date as well. And we're going to determine whether these dates are weekdays or not. That is to say, between 1 to not being a Saturday or a Sunday. And we can do that by using an if statement. If it's not a Saturday or a Sunday, recall that that's a Sunday and that's a Sunday and this is a Saturday. So make sure you include your end if. It's a good idea to always put that in before you forget. And we're going to increment a variable every time it's not a Saturday or a Sunday, and we'll use, for example, the number of work days, which I'll define as an integer. I should really set this variable equal to 0. it's set equal to 0 by default, but it's good practice really to set it equal to 0 yourself. I noticed that this ought to be 0 as well. Takes the value of 0, so starting and including that particular start date. Then finally we want to message box out the values of the work days, which gives us 65. Now, having said all that, using this VBA technique, we do know that within Excel there is a function called net work days. So, and we can access it from, it's called net work days, but we can access it from the worksheet function, which is a very powerful little expression which gives us access to all of Excel's functions. It really is quite amazing how many functions we can access, and one of them being this net work days. Which has an argument of two dates. It's always safe to use the date value, as I explained before, rather than date delimiters or inverted commas. Some funny conversions go on sometimes if we do that. So use date value. So if we now just message box out that value, you'll see that we get the same answer, which is a lot less effort, I must say. The advantage of this network days is that you can actually include public holidays. There's another argument after the two dates, and you can include in here you can include the any public holidays and so on. So it's a very useful worksheet function. There's a second exercise. Let's try this. It's given your birth date and the day and the present date, today's date, determine how old you are. Now you'd be tempted just to subtract the years using the year function in that, but there's a little problem here that you may or may not have had your birthday. But let's just do it the obvious way for the moment. In our example, we'll say the date is the 4th of November and the birthday, and the person is aged 50. You'll notice that they haven't had their birthday this year yet. So we can start off by specifying a variable for the date of birth, an expression, and we therefore need to dim that. As a date. And we want to find the difference in years. So be something like this, that the year of which is 2017, of course, and the DOB, which is now that birth date should be, it doesn't make much sense, so it's (1966). Okay, so if we run that, you'll see that well, we need to message box out the answer, and if we do that, we'll find that we get the wrong answer, which is 51, and as we say, the reason is that that person has not had their birthday as yet. So let's just give that a variable name, and we can therefore eventually message box out the age, or just could even run that again to make sure everything is not okay, because we haven't dimmed. So it's always a good idea to run things bit by bit because we haven't dimmed our okay, it gives an answer, but it's the wrong answer. So it looks like we need to construct the person's birthday coming up. So we'll say that we'll dim a new variable, and I'd like to put that equal to something using date serial to construct a date. And since we want the birthday this year, we're going to be talking about the year of the current date, which of course is 2017 in this example. We now want to pick up the features of the actual birthday, that is to say the month in which the person was born, followed by the day in which they were born, and we want to give that, put that equal to the birthday. And we might like to see that that's working. We can just message box out the birthday, which looks like the birthday this year. So if we're trying to determine whether the birthday has arrived or not, we could try this little interesting thing. If you've got the date which is less than the birthday, then let's see what that gives. It gives us true. In fact, it means the birthday hasn't arrived yet. So this is a logical value that you'll come across, true and false. Now true has actually got a value of -1 and false has got a value of 0. So we can often use these expressions to just evaluate to a numerical value. But just to reinforce that, I'll just convert it to an integer. Now that should true has got the value of -1. So we can use this bit of arithmetic to our advantage, because remember this here gave an answer which was 1 less than what it should be. So if we take into consideration that it gave 1 more, sorry, so this will evaluate to -1 and add -1 to the answer. So when we run that, we need to message box out the value of the age, and that gives the correct answer. So that's an interesting little bit of arithmetic which can be applied sometimes. You could just test it by changing that to having had the birthday, then the age would be 51, which is working. Of course you could try your own birthday just to make sure that it works. Speaking of birthdays, here's an interesting little bit of code as well. If you put your birthday in here and format it, your date of birth would give you the day, should give you the day that you were born. So you can see that this person was born on the Sunday. So you could just try your own date in there, date of birth, and determine what day it was. Finally, we could just take a look at the mod function. This is not a date or time function, but we could use it to determine if something is a leap year, as I'll show you in a moment. But what does 13 mod 4 mean? It means you divide 13 by 4, it goes 3 times, and then you say, well, what's left over? And the answer is 1, is the remainder. So it's more or less a remainder function, what's left over. So we might like to use that in using to determine if something is a leap year or not. 19 mod 4 is 0. That means that it's divisible by 4. This means that it's not divisible by 100, and this means that it is divisible by 4. So if you logic those together using the AND, either this and this, or it's equal to 0. So if we run that, it gives us the answer false, telling us, confirming that 1900 was not a leap year. And finally, just to tell you about the line continuation character, if the lines become too large, then you can break them. But you must do it in this particular order. It's a space, and then an underscore, and then enter. It must be done like this: space, underscore, and then press the enter key, and that will break the line in two, so it will enable you to see them if you can't see the lines, and then you'll see that code still works perfectly well.